Welcome everybody to the Myrna Method live stream. And tonight we're going to start a series on debunking diets. And I know it's like, oh God, here we go. You're going to go through all the diets. Really, I'm not entirely going to do it that way. I want to give you guys a really good platform to run any diet information on. And in order to do that, because listen, I look at these podcasts, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I didn't have any knowledge on nutrition, and I'm watching 50 million podcasts give me 50 million bits of information on nutrition. I mean, quite honestly, that would drive me crazy because it's really about nutrition inundation out there, right? So what I want to do is I want to, especially in the month of January. So I had a patient say to me, January is the big month of dieting. I have some relatives and I'm trying to explain to them about the Myrna method. Can you just talk about all the hogwash out there? I mean, is there any legitimacy to any of this? And how does it relate? Because we have high fat diets, low fat diets, everything. It's just, it almost depends on what the flavor diet of the month is. And I'm here to tell you that that is craziness when it comes to real science. Because it all has to have a biochemical origin. And that's what I spend my time doing, so you don't have to. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to set the stage on why we're going to debunk the video, why we're going to debunk the diets for the next videos, for the next live streams. So let's first talk about really dieting in general, in the sense of why do we even want to debunk diets? Why is that important? Why do I mean, don't I just want to eat healthy? Is it just about eating healthy? And, eating healthy is important, but just like with obesity, reversing obesity, which is what my whole lean life program is about. It's not about whether you lost weight or you gain weight. Come on now. If that were the case, it wouldn't have a 90% failure rate. 10% of the people that actually lose weight actually keep it off. And I'm not even sure half those people are really truly reversing obesity. So what is a diet? It's really about a choice of foods we eat. And so why do we eat certain foods? Why do people diet? I mean, I don't mean diet to lose weight, just eat in general. And here's all the reasons: you're hungry. Most of the time, if you're hungry, maybe you just don't care. It's whatever's easiest, it's the cheapest, it's the most available. And I'm sure some of you are laughing right now on the live stream like, yeah, that would be me, right? Well, it could be several of these, not just one, but there's survival, just to stay alive. Some people eat just to stay alive. And I think that certainly was the case 200 to 300 years ago, right? And I think that is where we see some of the science on fasting. Because when you're really eating to just stay alive, your body clicks into some chemical processes where it's really on high alert. It's like the body becomes more sharpened. And that's goes back to survival. So I think this whole survival thing, the staying alive eating, the fasting, I mean, when we talk about debunking diets, I'm going to have to go into intermittent fasting. I'm going to have to talk about that. And I'm going to give you the biochemistry behind it. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Yeah, there's something to be said about calorie restriction and the science behind that, which my program, the Lean Life, naturally does that. The body actually would want you not to have excessive calories. Another reason why people eat is because it just tastes good. I mean, come on, it just tastes good. It's entertainment. They don't really even think of food as anything other than, oh, let's go out to dinner so we can be entertained. Let's go find the next entertainment spot. And then it becomes about this hedonic form of eating, where it's really about tasting good. Your body clicks into these addiction centers. And again, In the Lean Life program, I talk about 4 main addiction centers: muscles and what they demand, insulin, the gut bacteria, and brain chemicals. So when you start doing it for tasting good and entertainment, you are already going down a road where it becomes a drug more than a nutrition. And a lot of times we use that as a coping mechanism. And then a lot of people just eat what they eat because of a belief system. Maybe they're an activist, a lot of animal activists or vegans. They're not really thinking too much about nutrition. They just kind of hope they hit the spot. Or maybe religious reasons. Sometimes the environment, oh, well, I just live here now and this is what they eat, so I'm going to eat that. How many people actually eat for health performance to improve oneself? And I did spell improve wrong. So, what is up with that? And that's what we're going to talk about tonight, and why debunking the diets in the next series that we do, the next 3 or 4 sessions, live streams, are going to start to make sense. Because the only reason really the body would want you to eat for would be to be a kick-ass human, honestly. And food and diet can do that. And a lot of people don't believe that. They're just like, oh, come on, come on. If that were true, the whole medical world would be talking about it. Well, guess what, guys? They are. It's just that your doctor may not be talking about it. But it's out there, and I'm going to show it to you. So when we think about creating a great human, how important is your diet? It basically comes down to this. You're these 2 things. You are these 2 things. Here's the 2 things you are. This simple. You're what you put in your head, and you are what you put in your mouth. That's it, folks. We can go home now because we just figured it out. You are your thoughts, what you put in your head, what you dream up, and what you want to be, and everything that goes into your head affects who you are. And at the same level, what you put in your mouth as well. And what I want to show you tonight is some of the research on what you're putting in your mouth and how it affects your head, biochemically, of course. And we all know that I'm not a big advocate of, oh, yeah, you're overweight or you have issues with food because you don't have the right behavior. Not so, folks. You're really having the tail wag the dog. Because what comes first is the biochemical balance. You actually affect your brain by what you put in your mouth. Now, granted, there is a circle there because I guess after all, you're here listening to me now. So some of you have got it in your head to show up. Maybe you're not perfectly balanced. But bottom line, when you determine really who you are as a human, there's nothing more impactful than those 2 things: what you're putting in your head and what you're putting in your mouth. So what we logically know, this is what most people know about food, is that food provides energy and nutrients. And that's why the supplement industry is off the charts. They're selling stuff that's half of it is poop. Hate to tell you. Half of it has no validity. And let me tell you something. Most of these supplements, we don't even know if what they say is in it because it's not regulated. But most people think, when they think of what's going in their mouth, it's for energy and it's for nutrients. And as long as they are getting fuel, and there's a lot of controversy on what makes good fuel. Should it be high in fat? Should it be high in carbs? What makes the best fuel? And that's why you take my Lean Life program. Because fuel is super important. And how it affects your body is important. But what we're going to talk about tonight is what you don't know. The head and mouth biodirectional. And that's what's going on. Your head and your gut and what you're putting in your mouth is so interrelated. It's crazy. And we're not making the connection, honestly. And I don't know why. I mean, you're talking to the wrong person if you ask me the question, why isn't this out there? I don't know. It just blows my mind. But that doesn't stop me because I'm going to push it out there. So you are what you eat and you are what you think. That's simple. You want to change yourself as a human? Seriously? You want to be a rocket ship on planet Earth? You want to be an unbelievable human with unbelievable success? Work on those two things. Work on those two things. So let me talk about at least the one thing I know about is the one you're putting in your mouth. Diet is a major factor in our behavior. And that's really what I want to talk about tonight. Because before we start debunking the diets, I think it's super important to understand why you're eating. And I'm going to the assumption that everybody here tonight wants to be a superhuman. They want to be the very, very best version of themselves. So I want to get through tonight how critical diet is related with the head game. Because like I said, it's what you're putting in your head and what you're putting in your mouth. And most of us think about what we put in our mouth is just like, oh, I don't want to get fat on it. Does it give me enough vitamins and minerals? And it's so beyond that. So beyond that. To the extent that how you eat affects your genes and how they get expressed. It affects how you will think. Imagine that. It affects your energy. So I see a lot, and it's trending a lot. I mean, obviously, in the last 2 years, all we see is about depression. After COVID, it's like everybody's got hit with depression. Well, ironically, our diet didn't go so well either. So what's the connection there? The connection is that diet chemically alters our mind. And I'm going to show that to you tonight. And the other connection is we do not fully understand the implications diet has on mental health. We really don't get it. You go see your doctor, and he's going to give you an antidepressant. He's not going to ask you simple questions like, what are you eating? And even if he did, he wouldn't know what to do with the information because doctors are not dietitians. They don't understand all the chemistry behind food and the chemistry behind how the body works with food. So when we talk about diet and depression and exploring all the biological mechanisms that the diet plays in the role of your head, because when we're going to debunk diets, guys, why are we debunking a diet? We're debunking a diet for one reason: to bring you into being your best human. And to be your very best human, you are going to have to deal with your head and you're going to have to deal with your mouth. So when we debunk the diets, we're going to have to look at how it makes you an amazing human. And you know, I don't think much about weight loss because weight loss is just a symptom. Sure, it looks good to be in that bathing suit. I get it. I get it. But to be superhuman means you've got to hit all the buttons. In relationship to your mental health is a huge button. So if I look at this study, and I picked this one, and there's many others like this, by the way, right? And it talks about how diet, underlying mechanisms of action by which diet may influence mental and brain health. The mechanisms of action associating diet with health outcomes are complex, multifaceted, interacting, and not restricted to one biological pathway. Thank you very much. Wow. It's not just one thing with diet. There's numerous pathways that have been identified. through which diet could possibly affect our mental health. These include the modulation of pathways involved in inflammation, oxidative stress, epigenetics, mitochondrial dysfunction, the gut microbiota, the tryptophan canine metabolism, the HPA axis, that's the pituitary gland, neurogenesis, epigenetics, obesity. Bottom line, folks, diet affects these particular areas, and these particular areas are 100% connected to your mental health. Hello? Anybody out there going, whoa, didn't know that one? So, to the extent that all these things, which I'm going to now briefly go over each one of these in its relationship, and I forgot to put epigenetics, I'm going over that too, in its relationship to diet and mental health, just diet and mental health. I haven't even scratched the surface on the other health implications like cardiovascular disease. So, yeah, I always say some things will kill you first. So, while you're worrying about this disease, this one's going to take you down. But what I wanted to do, instead of always talking about what's going to kill you, what's going to kill y'all, right? I wanted to talk about what's going to make you kick ass. That means a really good head, what you're putting in it and thought and learning and all those cool things, and what you're putting in your mouth. And all these areas here, although a lot of them do affect in other disease states, they are related to mental health. So, dietary inflammation and the potential and the incidence of depression and anxiety. And this is a meta-analysis where they refer to 17 studies that included over 157,000 participants in order for them to get their final analysis. That's a lot of people. This study at the very top talks about diet may influence the occurrence of mental disorders through its inflammatory characteristics. And bottom line, what they talk about at the bottom in green is as a result, long-term anti-inflammatory eating patterns may prevent depression and anxiety, whereas pro-inflammatory eating patterns may promote these conditions. And then it goes on to say, like, they're dietitians, which I don't see anything here that indicates they are. But I hate when they give advice like this and they really don't give you the whole story, which is what you're seeing out in the world. They say people should add more fish oil, fruits, walnuts, brown rice to their diet, which tells you absolutely nothing. Zero. Because if you took my Lean Life course, you're going, well, that's a bunch of hogwash. What does that mean? Should I just stuff myself with fish and just take a lot of fish oil and just eat a lot of walnuts? No. And if you do that, that's going to be pro-inflammatory. That's why that is stupid and ridiculous, and they should stick to what they know. So, what do we know about this inflammation? Well, I'm going to give you some more meaningful information that relates to the study and not just about eating, including walnuts in your diet, right? The effects of a high-fat diet on oxidative stress and cellular inflammation response in cognitive function. Now, oxidative stress has to do with these little compounds called free radicals, and I've talked about them before in some of my other live streams. But for tonight, because I don't have time to really get into all what they are, but they're little compounds that are created when we do certain things in our diet we shouldn't. And one of the biggest factors is high fat. Also, high sugar does it. So I wanted to really bring this into play because even if you're on a vegan diet, because everybody's like, oh yeah, vegan diet is great, it's anti-inflammatory. Okay, put the brakes on. Put the brakes on. A vegan diet has a lot of beautiful chemicals that are antioxidants. They have a lot of these phytochemicals that actually bind to oxidants. So oxidants are little compounds that run through the body and they can cause damage. And antioxidants are things like vitamin C, vitamin E, beta carotene, all these beautiful things that are high in plant sources. They bind to these oxidative species. It's a beautiful thing. But here's something you need to know. If you're taking those beautifully antioxidant plant foods and you're frying it up in oil, you might as well have not eaten them at all. And I don't mean to say that to be, I mean, that's so negative. But honestly, the amount of fat that goes in our diet and how that in itself can create an inflammatory response. And in my Lean Life course, you need to watch the video on fat inflammation. I think it's in module 5. I don't have time to go over it tonight, but I think that tells the story. Your fats are important. And this whole idea that we should just be eating unlimited amounts of fats is not true. It's a pro-inflammatory issue. And if you look in this study, it says cognitive dysfunction is linked to chronic low-grade inflammatory stress that contributes to cell-mediated immunity and creating an oxidative environment. Food is vitally important energy source. Okay, we know that, but it also affects brain function. Several studies have indicated that a high fat consumption causes overproduction of circulating fatty acids and systemic inflammation. In every single live stream, I use the example and I show you, and I'm going to do it again tonight, how these excess fatty acids, and there's only 2 ways we get them. You eat too much fat or you're just too fat. But what this goes on to talk about is the immune cells, fatty acids, free fatty acids, and circulating cytokines, which are immune cells, reach the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus is in the brain, guys, and that's where we have most of our appetite control. But this can cause inflammation in that hypothalamus and can contribute to brain cells proliferation, which means damage. Therefore, the role of high-fat diet in promoting oxidative stress and neurodegeneration is worthy of further discussion, and I would agree. Of particular interest in this article, we highlight the association and molecular mechanisms of a high-fat diet in the modulation of inflammation and cognitive defects. Taken together, a better understanding of the role of oxidative stress and cognitive impairment following a high-fat diet consumption would provide useful approach for the prevention of cognitive dysfunction. And you guys already know this. You know all this information because I bring it to you all the time, but it's good to see that a lot of these studies, this one's 2019, we have this one over here, 2018, so this isn't just hot off the press, right? This has been around a while. In this study, high-fat diet consumption results in mitochondrial dysfunction, oxidative stress, and certain brain cells, and it also affects the central nervous system. And this study talks about how metabolic syndrome, which is really insulin resistance, folks, that's what metabolic syndrome is, and that it's a key factor in a comorbidity with multiple sclerosis, MS, and other neurological conditions. Because a lot of times, if it's affecting the brain, it's usually also going to affect the central nervous system. a lot of neurodegenerative issues. And these studies go on to talk about, in green, I've highlighted, results demonstrate that modeling metabolic dysfunction, which they're really talking about this insulin resistance, which I will again talk about tonight. This dysfunction in mice that happens with chronic high-fat diet consumption. It promotes a loss of these brain cells and also across the brain as well as the spinal cord. So the key in this study is they're saying a lot of this creates really a inflammatory condition. And this study over here talks about high-fat diet causes mitochondrial dysfunction as a result of impaired ADP sensitivity, and that's adenophosphate, but that is not anything you need to worry about. That relates to the muscle, the mitochondria that we talk about. We talk about insulin resistance. What they're relating here is how a high-fat diet in green, we hypothesize that this can be a problem with the consumption of a high-fat diet. And it actually impairs the mitochondrial sensitivity and skeletal muscle. So we look more on diets, and we talk now about the gut microbiota. And I've talked about this because in the Lean Life course, where I teach you how to eat to reverse obesity and really reverse a lot of diseases, the gut microbiota, that gut microbiota is just huge, and it's a new pioneer in medicine right now. But for our purposes in this live stream, its relationship to anxiety and depression. That's what we're going to talk about. This study talks about growing evidence indicates the community of microorganisms through the gastrointestinal tract, i.e., the gut microbiota, is associated with anxiety and depressive disorders. And then if you look at my highlight in yellow, alpha and beta diversity findings were inconsistent. However, differences in bacteria taxia, and that can be a lot of these endotoxins that these gut bacteria produce. This indicates disorders that may be characterized by higher abundance of pro-inflammatory species. So these bacteria in your gut, which by the way come from food, a lot of them, they can become pro-inflammatory because these bad bacteria in your gut can release these endotoxins, and this can be a problem. And where they find it to be a problem, they see an association with this is that lower short-chain fatty acids. When you have a lower amount of short-chain fatty acids, and we talk about this in the Lean Life course where I talk about, look, when you eat fiber foods and plant foods, you create these really healthy compounds called short-chain fatty acids, and they travel through the body and they help with creating more health. So what this is really saying is that when we have low short-chain fatty acids, because we're not eating a high fiber diet, we're not eating a diet that is conducive to creating good gut bacteria, that this in fact can be related to pro-inflammatory condition, and it's related to the pathology of anxiety and depression. And this study over here talks about the different effects of a high-fat diet. The different effects of a high-fat diet rich in different oils on lipid metabolism, oxidative stress, there we go again, those free radicals, and gut microbiota. And I say oils because honestly, everybody thinks, well, I'm not going to do butter. I'm just going to stick with the seed oils. And really, excess fat, even if you think you're eating healthy fat, can be a problem. And it's certainly showing to be a problem for the brain. And it's also a problem for the gut. In this study, it was aimed to investigate the different effects of high-fat diet rich in different oils on lipid metabolism. And lipid metabolism, when they refer to that, they're referring to the cholesterols. You know, when you go get your cholesterol, your lipid panel, and your doctor says, oh, your cholesterol is too high. He's looking at some of those bad cholesterols. And the effect that the high fat diet has on that, that's science. It's out there. I know for me in my practice, I bring people's fats down to where the amount it should be. And a lot of them get off their statins. So I don't understand the whole keto push. And when we go debunking the diets, we will talk about this. And if you look at the bottom of this abstract in this study, it says high fat diets have the harmful influence on the lipids, those are those cholesterols, oxidative stress, they create more free radicals, and endothelial function. And those are the cells that line our arteries. And they can also cause gut microbiota dysbiosis. Now, what that means is these fats can create more bad gut bacteria than good. That's what microbiota dysbiosis is. And why is that a problem? Because when you start getting these bad gut bacteria, they can affect how chemicals are going to be, how they're going to function throughout the body, because these bacteria can travel. So super important not to get that gut off balance. And in this study, it talks about the gut microbiome linking dietary fiber to inflammatory diseases. Really what they're saying is lack of dietary fiber, although that's what the name of the study is. But as you read the study, it's clear they're talking about how this review and this study explores how dietary fibers modulate the gut microbiota composition and function, leading to an alteration of host physiology, meaning it changes the gut bacteria. It changes what's going on in there. The whole immune system in your gut can change. It can cleave chemicals it shouldn't be. That should be enzymes, particularly. And we'll talk about that because I am going to spend some time once we debunk the diets talking about the gut and all the implications there. We're going to really talk about that. Mostly, we'll probably start with that at the end of January, February. But in this study, it talks about a high fiber dietary regime has been consistently shown to increase the microbiome alpha diversity, the good guys, and it helps increase the short chain fatty acids. Yay, the good guys. Producing bacteria in the human gut. Short chain fatty acids are the main players in the interplay between diet, microbiota, and host health. In other words, guys, the gut bacteria, it affects the brain, and it does affect your health. And what I talk about is how these fibers coming from different plant sources create good bacteria and create short chain fatty acids. And these good bacteria, these short chain fatty acids, they travel to other parts of the body. They do good things for us. Okay. And we're not going to go into great detail tonight about that. We'll talk more about the gut in the future and how these guys really can change our whole epigenetics. Talk about epigenetics tonight. We're also going to talk about more of that in the future. But when I talk about gut brain, the gut bacteria, basically it wants to stay alive. They're little organisms. There's a trillion of them in there. They want to stay alive. And they tell your brain what to eat. That's how crazy that is. So gut bacteria got there in the first place because you chose for them to be there because of the food you ate. So if you eat a lot of really crappy food, you're going to get a lot of bad gut bacteria. They're going to keep you eating the crappy food. It's like a vicious cycle. That's just the gut bacteria and how it affects the appetite. Forget about what I just said. I mean, don't forget about it. But what I'm saying for this very second, what I said about how these gut bacteria can also cause brain inflammation. In this particular case, I talk about how they manipulate your appetite, and that really stinks. You know why that stinks? Because if they're going to manipulate your appetite, you're going to end up wanting to eat more of them. It's like an addiction. It's one of the addictions I talk about in my Lean Life course. You got to fix this one. You got to fix it. Because if you don't figure out how to fix it, it's a vicious cycle. You eat more of these crappy foods and you want more of these crappy foods. And maybe you're doing everything else right, but you're not fixing the gut. That's why we're going to spend a lot of time on the gut after we do this. Got to fix the gut. That's why in the Myrna method, the gut, okay, is one of the big cornerstones if you want to reverse obesity. Because everybody thinks, oh, well, don't I reverse obesity if I lose weight? Don't I reverse obesity if I do the paleo diet? Won't I reverse obesity if I do the keto diet? No, you won't. You may lose weight. I'll give you that. Just because you lose weight doesn't mean anything. It just means you lost weight. You got to figure out how to reverse it. And the gut is huge in doing that. So what you choose to eat affects brain chemicals, period. It does, not only from an appetite perspective, but from an inflammatory perspective, and has neurodegenerative issues on its very own. And brain chemicals affect how you think. Oh my God, we're going there next. We're going there next. How brain chemicals are affected by the gut bacteria and can affect how you think. That's what it really should say right there. And the really scary part about this is you don't know any different. It's because who you are. How many people do I deal with? They're foodies. No, God, I don't want to do your program because what if I'm not going to love food like I love it? You know, I love just eating all that good food and the sauces. And, oh my God, you are so run by these little guys. Because being a foodie a lot of times means you got a huge addiction issue because you can still love food that's good to you, but a lot of people can't see that. They can't imagine life without their love, their coping mechanism. So what you eat determines your actions. It really does because it manipulates how you think. So how do you break the cycle? It's really the key. I talk about for my Lean Life program how gut bacteria can manipulate the appetite brain center, but I don't spend a lot of time talking about how it actually affects your behavior and why if you're going to be a better human. What you're doing in the behavior part comes from the brain, and when these chemicals from food can affect your brain, remember, to be a great human means head and mouth. You got to be really good at both of those things. This is studies most of you have already seen, how the gut microbiome can actually chemically affect our appetite centers. So we talk more about some of these other pathways. This is the kynurenine metabolism pathway. This is the one that is linked, and this is also linked with gut and brain depression, inflammatory issues. We see a lot with people that have inflammatory bowel disease. We see a lot of associations, guys. People that have bowel issues, whether it's inflammatory bowel, whether it's irritable bowel syndrome, we're going to see anxiety. We're going to see some depression. Okay. And why that is could very well be because of this pathway. It has a lot to do with the serotonin that is made in the gut. 95% of that neurotransmitter is made in the gut, and that is very key for the brain. So in this study, it talks about inflammatory bowel disease is strongly associated with depression, and its patients have a higher incidence of depression than the general population, which is true for many gut issues. Depression also adversely affects the quality of life and disease. We know that prognosis of patients with inflammatory bowel disease. And so they talk about how these pathways, that by the way, are 100% based on your diet. And why is that? Because this pathway is specifically relating to the gut. And when you have gut bacteria that has totally messed up your gut because you have inflammatory bowel disease or because you have irritable bowel disease, your gut's not in a good way. So the pathway that affects behavior and depression, this particular pathway is going to be affected. So the kynurenine pathway and mental disorders are definitely related to the gut. And they create, in this study, pro-inflammatory cytokines that really affect the enzymes in this pathway. And the more I've researched on the gut, it makes me realize we really got to talk about enzymes. Because the biggest problem, well, let's just say this, everything in the body happens because of an enzyme. And most gut issues are because we're not getting digestion right. Okay, so when we talk about gut issues, we're going to go there. But what this study talks about is how, among several possible tryptophan metabolism, which is all part of the kynurenine pathway, can be influenced by the gut microbiome. Those are the bacteria in the gut, right? Disturbances of gut biodiversity may cause increased gut permeability and cause systemic inflammation, because when you start getting that leaky gut, you can get systemic inflammation. It is associated with a lot of diseases. But what we're talking about tonight is being a superhuman, and it's about your brain, what you put in your head and what you put in your mouth. And the point I want to get across in this study, they talk about how the aim of this review is to highlight the current knowledge on the interaction of gut microbiota and the central nervous system with the kynurenine pathway taken into special account. Up-to-date study results on specific psychiatric disorders such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, Alzheimer's, autism, depression, alcoholism. This is all related to the diet. So I think that's super important, because I think people just think a diet is part of entertainment or maybe just weight loss. The other thing that's quite scary, honestly, is how diet can affect what is called the epigenetic system. So we have our genetics, and epi means not the stuff we were born with, but how our environment, diet being a big part of it. Also environmental chemicals. I'm not going to say that isn't important, but diet is what we're talking about here, can actually change your gene expression. Yeah, diet can change your gene expression. Since we're talking about the head and the mouth, I thought it was interesting to bring some studies on epigenetics, nutrition, and mental health. Is there a relationship, according to this study on May of 2017? Again, this isn't new information, guys. This has been out a while. This study talks about one important epigenetic mechanism that appears to underlie the interaction between environmental factors, including diet, and our genome. And it's chemical modification of the DNA. And the DNA is that little center of the cell that tells the cell what it's supposed to do. So if the instructions of the DNA somehow become affected, the instructions change. And that means gene expression changes. That means that DNA is not going to do what it's supposed to do, what it was instructed to do from the beginning. That's what the gene told it to do, but then it got an epi. It got another message from somewhere else, from your environment and from your diet. So many dietary, if you look in the green where I've highlighted in this study, many dietary constituents may indirectly influence genomic pathways that methylate the DNA. Methylation is huge, not going into it tonight, but methylation is huge. Sometime we'll have to talk about that. And this is where they can see the evidence of these biochemical links between nutrition quality and mental health. Nutrition quality and mental health. And what I love is the last line here. Deficiency of both macro and micronutrients has been associated with increase in behavioral problems. Okay, macronutrients. I jump on that bandwagon because it's all about the proteins, the fibers, the carbs, and the fats. And we just talked about fats. That is a macronutrient. We talked about the pro-inflammatory issues with it. So really, with the macronutrients is not understanding how to balance those. Huge, which is what my course is all about. You have to learn to eat, basically. And so, we look at debunking diets. It's not like I want to go, oh, that guy's not saying it right because I said so. That's like really so, like that's insulting. That should insult you, honestly. We gotta go better than that. And I mean, I want to be able to say, gosh, guys, let's talk about the biochemistry over here. Because remember, we talked about that. And we talked about how this affects the brain. Let's look at that diet. Seems like it has a lot of fat. Well, why would they recommend that diet? That's what I want to tell you. Because there's a little slice of benefit, maybe, but it's just like what I talk about with nutrition. We got this huge landscape. And a lot of times they just focus way over here in this little corner. And they're like, oh yeah, look at this in this corner, great. As the whole landscape falls apart, we focus on one little corner over here. And that's that one little benefit, but we fail to look at the big picture. And that's what we see a lot with diets. And some of them, there's not really even a lot of science behind what they're saying. There may be some benefits over here in this little corner, but in the big picture, it may not be what it's cracked up to be. And in this study here, it talks about associations between dietary patterns and gene expression profiles of healthy men and women, a cross-sectional study. They go on to say, in highlighted area here, dietary patterns may impact gene expression through several mechanisms. For example, certain dietary compounds bind to transcription factors. Those transcription factors have to do with your DNA and regulate their activity, such as polyunsaturated fatty acids. By the way, those are found in plant oils. Studies regarding energy-restricted diets and their effects on gene expression levels have observed to downregulate some of these genes. In other words, it's served to maybe be a good thing because it regulates some of the sugar and lipid synthesis pathways, which I think when we talk about fasting diets, we're going to have to talk about where they're getting. Yes, so that's really getting it. Yeah, they're reading some of this stuff. They're looking at one little corner. But you got to look at the big picture when you're eating. So it goes on to talk about distribution of macronutrients also seems to have an impact on gene expression regulation. Do you get why now I do my course on lean life and really nail the macronutrients? And I know the macronutrient diet out there is, oh, I get it. Everybody's talking about it. It's trending. But do they really tell you what those macronutrients are supposed to be doing? I mean, that's the whole craziness. It's not about balancing macronutrients and then going, oh, okay, I did that. That's another diet. It's understanding that the macronutrients, when they're balanced correctly, they are creating a homeostasis in your muscles, your brain chemicals, insulin, and gut bacteria. That's what they're doing. And I think you'll begin to understand why I extrapolated everything down to my lean life course, because I spend a lot of time looking at studies, reading them, thousands of them. That's what I do. And it really came down to, wow, these are 4 areas that we really need to get those macronutrients to keep balanced. Bottom line, that's how you teach someone to eat. You teach them how to eat the macronutrients correctly. And that happens meal to meal, and it happens at the end of the day. Now, the meal to meal, obviously, oh my gosh, that's a disaster, which is why I created 2 chemicals. Because don't you know, I sat there as a dietitian going, oh my God, nobody's going to understand that. They'd have to go to school to get this, like I did, and understand. And I said, we can't do that. So I went to school so you didn't have to. I did the research so you didn't have to. That's why I came up with my 2 formulas, because get that right. So I wanted you to see here how important macronutrient balance is. And when we go look at some of these diets that we're going to debunk, I'm going to give you some criteria. One of them is going to be that. How would they fare in those macronutrient gain? And all I've talked about here is how high-fat diet doesn't seem to cut it. You need fats. It's a macronutrient. But we need the right amount. This talks about the distribution of macronutrients. They talk about how it impacts gene expression. And they really talk about, compared to a diet rich in monounsaturated fats, a diet rich in saturated fats, okay, those are those animal fats, butters, meat, cheeses. These result in even a more pro-inflammatory gene expression profile. Now, I hate this. I hate it. They're doing it again, and I hate it. I'm allowed to hate it. I'm a dietitian. The last line, just like the last one I read, really, guys, really stick with what you know. They talk about the Mediterranean diet has been associated with a decrease in expression of genes involved in an inflammatory response. Okay, guys, that tells this person that's reading this nothing, because a Mediterranean diet can be pro-inflammatory if you don't know how to balance those macronutrients. That's why I hate this, because then the doctor reads that, goes, oh yeah. You need to do a Mediterranean diet. Well, okay, there's a lot of really good foods in the Mediterranean diet, I suppose. But you miss the whole, you got to balance it. You got to talk about the macronutrients in the Mediterranean diet. And they didn't do that. So that's really misleading. Because I would read that and go, oh, I got Mediterranean diet. I do the Mediterranean diet. Look at me, I'm great. No, maybe not. So when I talk about this, which we're running low on time, so you guys know the story. These fatty acids that come out of our fat cells, these fatty acids that also can be from too much dietary fats, with the idea that these fatty acids accumulate in muscle cells, they clog up the insulin receptor site, which does not allow glucose into the muscle cell. But what you need to know is these fats that are clogging this up because too much excess fatty acids, too much dietary fat, this is pro-inflammatory. Being too fat is pro-inflammatory. To get the full story in this, you got to go get into my insulin when I talk about it in my course, because that's all I talk about is we got to get this down. And the thing that's really damaging here are the type of fats that accumulate when this happens. These are these ceramide fats. And I do talk about that in my Lean Life live stream. So to move on, and there's more studies, and I'm looking at the time here, and I want to be respectful of your time. Studies also talk about cognition with children. And, a lot of these studies, they don't give you really enough information a lot of times. And, they just say, hey, yeah, well, sugar load affects we know can affect the brain of kids. It can cause them to be more depressed and okay. The reason because of that is because of the sugar swings. But the biggest thing they're saying in this study is that this can cause behavior problems in children. So that affects the cognitive, doesn't it? Because you have a behavior problem, it's really tough to learn. And then this study talks about dietary influences on the cognition. And again, if you look at the highlighted area, it talks about, in addition, studies indicate that acute consumption, that means a lot, right, of hypercaloric diets, a lot of calories, impairs performance in a wide variety of cognitive domains, even in normal, non-obese control subjects. So we know obesity does that. We know that. This is interesting because what we're finding is a hypercaloric diet affects our cognitive. Now, you know, in my last live streams, I did talk about the dopamine centers in the brain and how, and I'll just kind of go in a review here so that we have this in our brains. When we talk about addiction, food addiction, we have a normal dopamine center, and this is like our normal happy chemical. And food, this is where we trigger through the day. It's just kind of normal. It goes up and down. It doesn't really stay stagnant. But when you eat a food that's really high in sugar and fat, we have these little reward centers in the brain. And these are little dopamine receptor sites. And every time you eat that fat and sugar, that thing gets hit. Woo, that's a good time. But the bad part about it is where your mood used to be goes down just a little bit. And then if you want to go back up, you got to eat even more. And then it goes down a little bit more. So each time you're doing this, you got a bigger amount of fat and sugar to get to that reward center. When this starts happening, this actually affects the cognitive function of your brain as well. You have more depression because you're going below that normal line of, oh, I feel good. This is a happy day. There's also a relationship between that and the mitochondria, your metabolism, which I don't have time to go over tonight, but we will. We will have some podcasts on that, some live streams. So diets need to be debunked. After what I just went over tonight, you're like, okay, yeah, we need to do that. Because it's a major factor in who we become. Remember, head and mouth. Superhuman, head and mouth. So why do people not think this is important? Something would have to happen to make you think different. The connection that diet is a factor. If I clean up my diet, I will think different. Maybe my life will be different. Obesity is a huge game changer. That's why I lock in. If I have only one thing to really get down and dirty, gosh darn, reverse obesity. If you're really going to make a difference in someone's life. But do it the right way. So I had a few more things. Really, the most important thing, I think, the takeaway here is that you are what you put in your head and you are what you put in your mouth. We spend a lot of time in our head. We get educated. We spend a lot of money on that. We watch motivational videos. And what we put in our mouth, we really don't understand what that means. Really don't understand what that means. To be a superhuman and who you are is what you put in your head and what you put in your mouth. And in this live stream, I wanted to show the biochemical association. There's an association between the two. And really understanding nutrition It comes down to really what I think three main things. You got to reverse obesity. Huge. And this means teaching you how to eat. Because once we do this, we really knock out like 80% of the issues. Because I'm going to talk about the gut bacteria. If I'm really going to talk about reversing obesity in the Myrna method way, there's 4 things I'm going to talk about all the time. We could spend years on them. And they all funnel back to reversing obesity. Because if we can balance the macronutrients in our meals, in our day, we pretty much can reverse obesity. And then we need to know why we're doing it. I think it's going to be a diet all over again. It's not going to be a lifestyle until you realize you are doing the macronutrients because you have addiction if you don't feed muscles right. You have addiction if you don't do brain chemicals right. You have addiction if you don't do gut bacteria right. And you have addiction if you don't do insulin right. And if you have addiction, you're not eating from the physiological cues that your body was born to do. And if you can eat from the physiological cues and not addiction, your body will take you to your leanest calories. Hello, hello. You will be at your ideal body weight. You have to learn to eat. Reversing obesity is absolutely paramount. That's why we have to go debunk these diets. We got to. We got to do. We have to have it. We have to have it. And then the other thing is vitamins, minerals, and enzymes. Some people, they go, yeah, this is the ticket. I'm just going to take all these supplements. Okay, they're important. They are important. They're also important with mental health. I didn't go into that in depth. Vitamins, minerals, and enzymes. I want to talk about enzymes coming up. Because the gut bacteria alters our health, but it alters digestion, people. You got IBS, you got enzyme problems. And then you're going to have all kinds of problems. And then the last thing is medical nutrition therapy. And that's where you get a licensed dietitian to walk you through, okay, you're already imbalanced. You've already got inflammatory bowel disease, or maybe you got, arthrosclerosis. Who knows? What MS now is a dietitian. We got to work some things differently. You have autoimmune. I'm going to recommend no gluten. Certain things I'm going to say, well, within that, we need to do a little bit of this, a little less that. But bottom line, we're still going to reverse obesity. We're still going to get our vitamins, minerals, and enzymes. So this is sort of like an adjunct medical nutrition theory. That's what licensed dietitians do, is they train in helping you with the imbalance. But we also should be helping you with just this right here so you don't get the imbalance. That's the key. So I went a little over. Sorry about that. I wanted to leave it open for some questions. I'm going to check the chat. I have a comment here for foodies. How does one distinguish the difference between food addiction cravings versus an enjoyment and interest in the varieties of flavors of food? Love that question. Food addiction is when you can't stop. Period. You should love your food. I mean, you should be eating food and going, oh, it's great. You should have a Godiva chocolate and be able to have one. That's truly enjoyment when you can take a bite of something and go, wow, that was wonderful. That's all I need. But when you have to eat the whole box of Godivas, yeah, that's a problem. I want you to enjoy Godiva chocolate at 1 or 2. Done. With food addiction, when there's an imbalance, which I talk about in my Lean Life course, let's say you're depleted in carbohydrates and you take one bite of that Godiva, guess what? You're going down big time. You're going to eat the whole box of Godiva because that's what addiction does in the muscle that's depleted of carbs. Deplete that muscle of carbs and take one bite of a Godiva chocolate and boom, you can't stop. It tastes so good. It tastes so good. It just, oh my God, it's so good. It's an addiction. It tastes so good. But when you're balanced, you can take a bite of it. It tastes good. You like it. But it's not a drug. So I don't know if that answered the question. I'm sure you'll let me know more in the chat if it didn't. But anyways, I wanted to leave it open for more questions. We're also going to be putting these on Myrna Method YouTube channel. So I've got somebody that's going to copy these or put it or whatever they do. I don't have the IT stuff, and make sure it's available so that if you came in late or you want to share this information, or maybe when we start debunking the diets, you may want to go back and look at this one. It won't be necessary because each one will be its own little separate thing. But I just felt like it was important to, like, why do we even want to debunk the diets and the platform that we're starting at? Is it's all about you, hopefully, making the best you. What you put in your head, what you put in your mouth. That's it. That's who you are. So if you guys want to, anybody want to unmute their mic, feel free. I don't have a big crowd. Anybody want to make comments? Maybe you liked it tonight. Maybe you hated it tonight. Maybe you can relate to it. Or maybe you're just tired and you want it to be over.
No, I was going to say that was an excellent presentation, as usual, Myrna.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Okay, well, if there's no other questions.
Oh, hey, Myrna.
Yes.
Yeah, if you're following the Lean Life program and you have a healthy gut, how do you handle stressful environmental factors like a death in the family? Can it actually set the gut back?
Yes. Yes. You know, I didn't go into that a lot tonight because I want to do a whole series on the gut. And I'll get more into the bio-directional. Yes, your emotional level can actually cause gut dysbiosis. Crazy. So if you're having a stressful situation, then it's trying to figure out how to not make it so maybe emotionally traumatic would probably be the thing. And what's really ironic is the more you get gut dysbiosis, then the more prone you are to having anxiety and being more emotional. So it's like this vicious cycle. Yeah, there is definitely a gut brain in regards to stress. Stress can, from the gut perspective, it can increase more bad gut bacteria for sure, which then manipulate your appetite. So you're wanting more foods that are comfort foods. And also stress can release more sugar into your blood. We talked about that. And if you're insulin resistant, it can actually make you fatter. So there are ways to combat that with food, the stress parts with the getting fatter. But as far as the combating it with the gut, number one, if you have a healthier gut, taking probiotics, taking some digestive enzymes, which we'll talk about that, and your gut is healthier, then the stress that you have won't be as impactful. Does that help, McKenna?
Yes, it does. Thank you. Because I think I experienced that after I lost a family member, that it just completely set me back. And I'd just been following this for years, just naturally. And then when that happened, it just, I think my lunch and my breakfast were on point because of habit, and then dinner just fell off. So I was just kind of curious about how that kind of played a role with the gut.
Yeah. So, when you have something like that happen, then what we're going to talk about is, and when I talk about the gut, is we might just have to buffer ourselves with some supplements that get us over those rough times. Like, I'm not a dietitian that says, oh yeah, everybody take a boatload of supplements. I'm not really that dietitian. I feel like if we can get things working like they should, we should be pretty good. But yeah, what happens with the gut dysbiosis is it affects our digestive enzymes, it affects our ability to absorb certain vitamins and minerals. So that has this trickle effect that screws up our health in the long run. I've got another comment here. I just came off COVID and antibiotics. Yeah, so taking antibiotics definitely has can really affect the gut because it wipes out everything, wipes out all the good guys, the bad guys. So you're kind of starting with this clean slate, which some ways can be good, right? Because if you had really bad gut bacteria, I guess it kills it. But in some ways, not so good because, man, you got to really make sure that you're starting to eat really good food because very quickly those bad gut bacteria start to multiply, and they do it with a lot of sugar and a lot of fat. And then you can be, in worst case, you get off these antibiotics, and then 6 weeks later, you can have some serious gut issues. Taking probiotics, making sure you're doing the balanced diet, paying attention to eating healthy plant foods, all that's going to be super important if you're coming off the antibiotics. All really good questions. So I don't have any more comments. And if nobody else has anything to add or questions, I will see you guys next Tuesday. That's when we go over the lean life, really bring that home. And then next Wednesday, we're going to continue on with debunking the diets. Thank you for joining. See you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.